Go live anyway. Right, okay, I think we are all systems go. So welcome anyone tuning in to another Raptor Aid Facebook Live question and answer session. I'm really pleased to say we've got Dr. Gareth Tate from the Endangered Wildlife Trust in South Africa. Gareth manages the Birds of Prey programme, but there's no point me telling you about it. I'll probably hand over to Gareth to explain a bit about EWT and the Bird of Prey programmes, and then we'll get into loads of questions about what he does. So welcome, Gareth. Thanks for taking time to chat to us. Tell us a little bit about your role in EWT.
Sure. So I took over the Birds of Prey program actually from Andre Buerta, who I believe did a talk with you guys a while back. It was towards the end of 2016, I took over the program, and I inherited, obviously had to fill some quite big boots with regard to the projects that we were active in. And a big part of what I did was having to kind of re-strategize and review the program, look at all the data available, and kind of change the scope, and obviously also take on a lot of the old work and the great work that had been done historically by the EWT. But essentially, so we developed a whole suite of projects that are kind of focused in action towards the conservation of birds of prey. And the great thing is that we don't only focus on specific species or specific groups of species like just the vultures, where historically a lot of the work was targeted, and we've built the program to focus on a variety of diurnal and nocturnal raptors. So we focus on the research, monitoring, and the actual active applied conservation of these species. And I think one of the kind of pillars that we've developed for the program are using these kind of species as flagships for the conservation of really incredible habitat. And I'll give you an example. And we use bird species that are generally quite specialist in terms of where they need to live and what they feed on. And we use those to conserve places like I spoke about earlier, the Blighter River system. It's this incredible riparian system. And in that is a very special owl, a Powell's fishing owl, which I'm sure you all know about. And so what we're doing is working on different interventions that protect the owls. And as I say, they're kind of an umbrella species for a host of other animals that rely on the same system. So we've set up quite a few of these kind of projects using these specialists. We work on the African grass owl, which covers a massive area in the kind of more central areas, the high veld areas of South Africa, beautiful grassland. And we work with a range of different people and farmers and communities to protect the owl, and then obviously protect the habitat. But I obviously can't go on without mentioning the vultures, which certainly do form the core of our program. As a lot of us know, we're facing an African vulture crisis. 7 out of 11 of Africa's vultures, now sitting on critically endangered or endangered globally, and their population's plummeting big time. So a lot of our work is focused on vultures, protecting their habitats, creating safe spaces for them to breed and forage in, and addressing all their major threats. And there's been a lot of groundwork done, and we definitely don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we are coming up with some really awesome tools to protect them, and using a lot of technology to protect them, which is quite exciting. And then obviously we also work on our larger eagles. As you saw my presentation on our marsh eagles. We've been working on eagles in Southern Africa since 2012. We started off our work in Kruger National Park, and now we've spread into this really interesting population in the Karoo, which is in the central part of South Africa, where these eagles are nesting on electrical infrastructure, which is quite unique and an interesting population, at least. So a variety of birds of prey. I mean, I haven't even touched sides on the different species we work on, but I think if I hand over to you to ask any questions to kind of guide the talk in terms of what you guys want to know.
Well, no, I was gonna start at the beginning really, because I mean, I say at the beginning. So 2016, you still took over the program, so that's 4 years ago. So that, I mean, you only looked like you're about 24 years old anyway, Gareth. You look, you look young. So what did you do? Did you come from? You've done your PhD. So talk a little bit. Tell people about your PhD, anyone who's interested, because people will be interested in what you did that in, I'm sure.
Sure. Yeah. So I definitely, established an interest for birds from an early age, and I pursued that throughout my studies, and I managed to land an incredible PhD working on black sparrowhawks, and it kind of ticked all the boxes in terms of what I wanted in terms of the skills I wanted to develop, that I could basically apply to raptor conservation. So working on black sparrowhawks, they're by no means an endangered or threatened bird. In fact, you can kick a tree anywhere in Cape Town and one will fly out probably. But they're a really unique animal. As I mentioned to you earlier, they've shown quite a resilience to urbanization, and they're basically living amongst people and hunting feral pigeons amongst other things. And with kind of urbanization and forestry, they've had this range expansion. So my PhD looked at various aspects of their range expansion, and then also how they are adapting to different areas. So the Cape, where I live on the peninsula here, is very unique in terms of its climate and its topography and everything. So it's very different to the rest of South Africa. We've got a Mediterranean climate. And as soon as you move kind of northwards out of Cape Town, it completely switches around, and you start having more kind of tropical temperate environments. And what's happening on the Cape is that the sparrowhawks have moved in here. And I think Peter Steyn and a few other guys were the first to kind of record breeding on the peninsula. And that was only in about 1993, was the first breeding in sparrowhawks recorded on the peninsula. And so there was this really interesting population and study that was being set up on the peninsula with sparrowhawks. And as they became more kind of abundant and established on the peninsula, it was also noted that they were the actual color of their morphs. So the sparrowhawk occur in two discrete morphs. You get the light one and the dark morph. And on the peninsula, over 80% of the population are these dark morphs, which are considered rare throughout the rest of their range. So as soon as you move out of the Cape, you see a complete reversal in the morph ratios. So they're more the traditional light morph that you find throughout their distribution. So I started investigating what were the drivers behind these dark morphs, and why were they so successful. And I looked at their population genetics. I worked on tracking and GPS tracking them and looking at their movement ecology and their foraging. And then we used nest cameras on about 20 different pairs, collected some really incredible information on what they were hunting and basically how they were adapting to the local conditions in the peninsula. And the increased melanin and their dark plumage made them better hunters under the conditions in the Cape. And we also now look, the research is still going on. We're looking at their ability to, their improved immunocompetency. So they have a better ability to fight off blood parasites. So that's another thing we're looking at, which are more abundant in the Cape Peninsula. So this really cool PhD, and I traveled Southern Africa for about 6 months catching sparrowhawks. So you couldn't really ask for more than a cool PhD. So yeah, lots of hard.
Well, I was just going to say, it kind of answers my next question I was just thinking of was, what do you enjoy the most sort of when it comes to working with raptors, being out in the field, which is kind of sort of, it answers itself, or the sort of data crunching and that side of things. But I can get the gist straight away from you listening to your Karoo talk, and then obviously what you just said about catching. Yeah, it's being out in the field, and I'm exactly the same. I hate being sat in front of a computer really doing data.
I'm sure most of us do, yeah.
It's all about being out there. Of course, the study, the black sparrowhawk study, so that was part of a bigger study. I say a bigger study. It's been, as you said, Peter Stain and others in 1993. How long has the study been running for before you took part? Then I know we've mentioned Anne running, well, the Queen of Black Sparrowhawks, as you mentioned. So how long's that been running for?
So yeah, it's an incredible study population, and the research properly kicked off in 2000, so a long time ago. And it's one of the longest running kind of data sets and studies on a urban raptor, I think, out there. When I was analyzing my data and then comparing it to other studies around the world, it really is a unique data set. And we were always a little bit worried. I mean, we've been playing around with this population and these birds for such a long time. Some of them have become completely habituated to people. And we were getting a little bit concerned because they were either becoming quite tame or really, really aggressive. So to the point where I had to walk into the forest with my umbrella to keep these from taking my eyes out. And you've got a 1.3 kilogram female. That's about a 4-pound female coming full tilt at you. It's a pretty scary and intimidating thing. So, but that kind of also opened up so many unique experiences. I grew to know each kind of individual bird that I worked on, and some of them, as I say, they were very temperamental, and you couldn't really approach them or their chicks. And then I had some experiences like the Chart Farm female, we called her. She was just unbelievable. You could climb up to her nest, and literally she would sit on the nest with the chicks, and you'd peel away her wing and grab her chick, and she would just stand there, and she'd just sit there with her wings fully exposed, just checking you out, and letting us work on her chicks. And I followed her for something like 4 years, and it was pretty sad. But 2 or 3 years ago, Anne actually called me, and she said, that she flew into a fence and broke her neck. So, but as what I'm getting to is it's a very unique study population. I don't think you get many of them around the world. And we ring them. So we've rung 70% of the birds. So they all unique.
Wow.
When one flies over, we always make sure we got our binoculars or our camera on us so you can identify the guy. So it's Oh,
brilliant! And that obviously, like you say, the research is still going on, and excellent. So you mentioned before we came on, talking about Cape Town. Obviously, I was asking you a few questions before. You mentioned obviously Cape Town's really good for a number of different raptor species. What other species do you get around sort of the urban environment?
So we're quite lucky. We've got a mosaic of kind of an alien forest. So we've got plantations of pine and gum, and then we've got our indigenous Afro-montane forest, and then it's very mountainous. So we're on this peninsula that's kind of dominated by Table Mountain and all the adjacent mountain ranges, and it kind of sets up a really diverse kind of area. And then obviously amongst that, you've got your golf courses and your gardens, and it certainly supports a variety of raptors that feed on things like your feral pigeons and the things that come along with kind of urbanization and green spaces and green belts. So we've got quite a good population of peregrine falcons. A good friend of mine, Andrew Jenkins, has been working on them for a long time. He's written many a book. If you Google peregrine falcon South Africa, I'm sure his name will pop up first. So he's been working on them for quite a while. And then we have the accipiters are also really abundant. So we've got obviously the black sparrowhawks that have moved in, rufous-breasted sparrowhawks, which are one of my favorite. They, the little cousin of the black spars. And one of our big concerns is since I even started my work in 2012, a lot of the rufous-breasteds have disappeared. And I think what we're noticing is they're being outcompeted by the bigger black sparrowhawks. I used to also pick up a lot of kind of prey remains of these rufous-breasted sparrowhawks under the black sparrowhawk nest. So there's definitely competition and overlap in their nesting sites. And then we've got I think there's 2 pairs of Verreaux's eagles on the mountains here in a place called Silvermine.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you can see them. They pretty much stick to the mountain ranges where they eat dassies and hyraxes. And then we have quite a good population of jackal buzzards. They do really well here. Goshawks, which also have disappeared a little bit in response to the black sparrowhawks arriving. And then, we also have our seasonal arrival of our European honey buzzards, which are pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
We've also got really quite a nice population of forest buzzards, which are quite special to me because they, you don't get them everywhere. They're quite endemic to this area. So they kind of the more dominant raptors around here. We had a hooded vulture arrive here out of the blue. People couldn't believe their eyes when they arrived, when it arrived. And a friend of mine went out and saw it, but it disappeared, and we never really kind of followed up. But it was a really interesting and very bizarre to have a vulture flying over the peninsula. And then harrier hawks, we've got quite a few of those. They as urban as a raptor can get. They're in and amongst the parks and all of that. So we've got a good healthy population.
Brilliant. I've seen, because another person I've followed is Shane McPherson with his crowned eagles work. Do crowned eagles get down to the Cape and in urban, because they're becoming more and more, I don't know, please correct me if I'm wrong, common might not be the right word, but I know I see things pop up frequently and it might be what I follow, about crowned eagles being in more urban areas in South Africa.
Absolutely. So I often, throughout my PhD and finding sparrowhawks, I'd often find crowned eagles and in these more urban areas. They certainly are doing well, and they kind of adapting to a slightly different diet in the cities to what we used to in the more traditional areas where they live. And they're eating things like hardy-daws and rock hyraxes, and I mean, we're all pretty over the moon that they're eating hardy-daws, because I'm not sure if you guys have, hardy-daw ibises are probably one of the noisiest, most gregarious bird we have here. So this ibis that travels around in big groups, it has poops everywhere and they're extremely loud, so they wake you up all the time. So we were quite stoked to see that the crownies were actually feeding quite a lot on hardy-daws. But they're an interesting species for a large eagle like that are generally quite secretive. I mean, they're as secretive as you get. They call them, the leopards of the tree, the leopard of the eagles. Yeah. And from where I grew up in the bush up in the east of South Africa, to find a crowned eagle was incredibly special, So the population in Durban are doing really well, and they're also all over the place, like the sparrow. They're adapting quite well.
Yeah, I just can't get my head around, like, in the UK, birders go for, like, at the moment with everyone being on lockdown, they're doing their garden tick list. What can I see in my garden? And then when you think the fact that someone could have a crowned eagle in Durban, like you say, come through their back garden or something, it just gets a bit mind bending, really, for us Brits. But that's I
actually got a message about 2 or 3 days ago. A lady said she had a crowned eagle that's eaten 2 out of her 5 cats. So, and it's about the third message I've got, with regards to pet eating crowned eagles, and it's usually the juveniles. And Shane, I immediately contacted Shane, and his camera trap work on the nests of crowned eagles showed that pets do unfortunately form a very, very small proportion of your diet. It's something like under 5%. Yeah. But when Jingles goes missing, and it's not taken lightly, and Shane would often send me photographs of a cat or a dog on the nest of a crowned eagle, and they can take dogs up to the size of a Jack Russell, even bigger.
Yeah.
Is concerning, and it's interesting. We've also found that it's mostly the juveniles that have finally got old enough to leave their territories and being fed by their parents. The parents generally chase them off. They're the problem ones, and they can find that what an easy target a pet is, and they become a little bit of a problem animal, and they sit on the balconies watching your animals, but you have to shut indoors. So we go and trap them. Well, I say we, but colleagues of mine, Ben Hoffman and Shane, both go out and they'll trap these birds and take them up into the bush, far away from the cities.
Good. Yeah, I suppose, because it could be something that's going to get, something you're going to have to deal with progressively more and more, I suppose. But, nevertheless, well, I've got a little dog, so I can understand their pain. But
absolutely.
Still, nevertheless, it's quite an impressive garden tick in the same respect. Okay, let's go back to EWT then, and you work with EWT. So. Yeah, I mean, again, in the UK, I was just listening to you say about using these flagship species, and I suppose in Britain we've got a similar one in the shape of the barn owl, the common or York barn owl, Tyto alba, and that's the same. You very much, you might find some people a bit standoffish landowners that don't want to work on certain species of raptors, but the minute you mention a barn owl, they tend to open the doors up, and it's a great species to create dialogue and work with people. So it's interesting to hear that work and species like the grass owl as well, and the Pell's fishing owl. Do you find that people are quite receptive to the work that you're carrying out and support the work when it comes to raptors in South Africa? And that's quite a big question. It's a big question, but I guess it's also quite important. South Africa is an extremely dynamic place in terms of its different communities and people that we work with. From your livestock farmer all the way through to your kind of really rural communities that live alongside these massive protected areas that are impacted, sometimes by or affected by human-wildlife conflict. So it's a very dynamic place, and I must say that generally speaking, it's really encouraging how a lot of these people do want to work alongside us, and a lot of the work we do is just kind of general awareness, and a lot of people don't really understand the species we work on and how important they are in the environment and in the ecosystem, especially when you're talking about things like vultures that have a really important ecosystem service. So generally speaking, I think the people we work with are really receptive. With our Marshall Eagle project, which I've been really putting a lot of blood, sweat and tears into over the last 2 years. We're going into these areas where farmers don't see many people, and I can't explain to you, even last week, we went and spoke to a farmer about a marsh eagle that went down. One of our track birds went offline, and this guy just gave me his keys to his house and said, "You can stay here. There's some beers in the fridge," and they're so open and hospitable. It's incredible. It changes their mindsets, because a lot of them do shoot things like marsh eagles. They prey on lambs, and they've got a bit of a bad rep around South Africa, marsh eagles. They eat chickens and lambs, and many people hold those quite close to their heart. Yeah, well, it was. I mean, part of the question was, talking about crowned eagles just before, and pets is one conflict, but then also I remember from the webinar you talking about how you're using, you've introduced like an alert system because you can tell with the GPS tracking where birds are going to be potentially or are. It was quite interesting to hear the different ways that you're working with landowners, because it really doesn't, in the UK, it's not like that at all. If we look at the two species of eagle, or one species, golden eagles, and one of the conflict being shooting and interest, I could never imagine conservationists ringing up a gamekeeper saying there's an eagle just on your side of the boundary. So it's really, it's quite interesting from your aspect to hear that it's working in that sense. It can work. I'm sure it doesn't always work in that sense, but yeah. Do you ever get? Is it one of those where you think, when you came up with the idea specifically about martial eagles and sharing what could be potentially deemed as sensitive information in where a bird is, did you have to sit back and think, should we do this? Shouldn't we? Or was it quite straightforward? Decision?
So I guess it was one of the ways to open the doors to working with these farmers. So and there's been generations and generations of farmers that were brought up to shoot eagles as kind of vermin, So a lot of them are kind of also tired and fatigued about hearing about these greenies coming in to protect the eagle at all costs without really considering their situation. And one lamb is 1,500 rand, which is how many, 100 quid or so. And you've got to also see it from their side, that when they're losing 6 sheep a week, no, not a week. I mean, marshals will probably kill one a month, but that compounded by the amount of sheep taken by jackal as well, and caracals and all of that. So you can start seeing the picture that it is an issue and it's their livelihood. So one of the ways we get to kind of engage with them is beyond the education and awareness around the conservation of the birds, is to start developing conservation interventions that work for them too. And I think this one, it stops them shooting the birds, straight up, because now we can engage with them. We say, listen, this is a tool. Let's start preparing it, and we take them out and we actually catch the birds, let them handle the birds, show them what they look like close up and what an incredible animal they are. And that just kind of plants the seed. So the early warning system, as I say, it's really at its early stages, but it's just one of the avenues to start developing kind of new ideas to get farmers on board. And we do it with wild dogs up in certain parts of South Africa, where we collar some wild dogs. And I mean, wild dogs can go into a camp and kill hundreds of game breeders, prime live game, heads of game, a buck or whatever it may be, or antelope. And we've also now started an early warning system, and we let the farmers know when the dogs are in their property. So
yeah, I suppose it's a case. I'm a farmer's son, so I know exactly what farmers can be like. And it is. I like the idea of building bridges, and I suppose if you're willing to be open with them, as I say, I think in the UK we're a long way in many respects from that with some of the species that we have human wildlife conflict with. So it was really interesting to hear the martial eagle side of things, and to see how that develops. And I suppose, well, it must work if they're letting you have access to the house and their fridge, because I don't know many farmers in the UK that would let you drink the beer. But anyway,
it's a real like salt of the earth breed in the Karoo and the Karoo where we work. It's I mean, you end up spending so much time drinking coffee and beer with them that you can't get down to your work. They just they don't see many people. I think they've got these massive farms, thousands of hectares, and they don't see many people. So they're all delighted when we rock up there and
Good. I'm glad to hear that's going well. Just talking about, so how many's in the team then at EWT? How many have you got working with you in your programs?
So we've got 5 permanent staff, and they're based at satellite offices across the country. Our hub is in that Kruger National Park area, which we call the Lowveld, which is it's unbelievably beautiful and diverse, and that's where there's just a hotspot for raptors and vultures and all the birds we work on. So we've got an office there with John and Lindy. They're based up there. John heads up all our eagle and owl research and conservation. Lindy does all our vulture work up there. And then moving more into the central parts of South Africa, we've got Renal stationed there. She's an Afrikaans field officer. So she's obviously a great value to the program because she can speak Afrikaans and engage with a lot of the Afrikaans farmers and stuff. She does a lot of work with vultures in particular. Throughout the Kalahari, we actually, every single year, we have the Hawk Conservancy Trust join us, and they tag birds along with us, and we've built a really cool relationship up with the Hawk Conservancy and Campbell Mern and his team. And we travel and we ring over 100 vultures every year, and we tag them with these patagial tags. Do I have one here? But essentially, it's a cattle ear tag, and we fit them onto the bird's wings, and we're getting incredible information around the survival and dispersal and breeding biology of birds through these patagial tags. And then I'm based in the Cape, but I'm all over the place. I spend probably 2 weeks a month, and out of the city in the field and working. But what's really great is we've got a big network and partnerships with other organizations and individuals. We've got quite a good volunteer base that help us. We have a lot of students on board. So it's a nice way to get our work published and have kind of research guided work to make sure that we're making impact and doing things correctly, addressing threats correctly. So yeah, we've got a big team, although they're not all permanent, but we've been quite good at establishing a network of also people that can work for free, because being an NGO, we need people to work for free and help us.
Conservation, conservation full stop. Yeah, absolutely. You need to work through. So talking about students, because that's, and we talked about briefly bits. I mean, that's one thing that Raptor Aid and I'm really, really passionate about is sort of giving people the opportunities to learn about, birds of prey and projects and organisations like EWT and all over the world. What sort of is there many opportunities that come up for students working on projects with EWT or through universities alongside EWT? Yeah,
so what's quite nice is a few of us at the EWT are research associates with different universities in South Africa. I'm a research associate with the Fitzpatrick Institute of African Ornithology. And then a few of us are also affiliated with universities up in KwaZulu-Natal and in Johannesburg. So we have kind of access to students, mostly postgraduate students, because a lot of our work is field-based. It requires at least, spending a lot of time up to a year in the field. But we also have these really big data sets that we kind of also tap into the universities for to analyze and write up in publications and scientific publications. So, so in terms of South African students, we've got quite a nice flow of students into the kind of work that we're doing and tapping into the projects that we're active in. We are trying to open up doors to get more kind of international interest. We work quite closely with the Peregrine Fund and the Wageningen University. So we're trying to establish maybe some sort of exchange program with the Dutch. And then we also, Andre Botha is one of the field, he has a partnership with the University of Reading. So with Campbell Mern and the Hawk Conservancy Trust. So we have kind of network of students, and we're always looking to get more students on board, and we've got a ton of data and that always needs to be analyzed, and we've got some really cool projects that, as I was saying with our pals fishing our project, a lot of our breeding seasons overlap, so we're just all over the place trying to make sure we're getting cameras installed and birds monitored, and so we need to get as many students and volunteers on board. So yeah, always. Oh, good.
No, that's great to hear. And as I said to you before I came on, that's one of the and I mentioned it to John the other day in an email. I said to you, email John Davis. It's one of the questions I get asked when I go into universities and just to do talks and various things about birds of prey. I get asked, how can we get into it? I'll ask you the same question then, Gareth, that I get asked, that I mentioned to you before. See if you can. I'm a bit pointed with it now, but if you've probably been asked it. If a young person were to ask you, an undergrad, say, how do I get into raptor monitoring? Go on. What would be your 2 pence worth of advice?
It obviously, if that's your interest and you want to pursue raptor research and monitoring, then you need to get involved in it at an early age. And I think university is a great place to start doing that. I took advantage of as many kind of field-based work and monitoring as possible. And I got involved in things like the avifaunal monitoring for wind farms in South Africa. So we did a lot of like pre-construction monitoring of different bird communities in South Africa, in areas where they were going to develop wind farms. So I got involved in that, and I just put my hand down to help volunteer with some of the work in Karoo on Marshall Eagles, and I just kind of put my name out there, got my fingers in every pie, and that helps a lot. It starts exposing you to the work, and then it kind of also sets you up to be able to study them, because you develop these relationships with the researchers around the country, and then you often find your supervisor, and then you can also find a project that kind of aligns with what you're wanting to get involved in. So just getting out there and being a little bit kind of just in people's faces, and make sure that you take every opportunity out there. Even though you're studying, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't really, volunteer and get involved in as much as possible.
Yeah, well, that exactly. That's what I say to a lot of them, because a lot of them, as you say, it's all well and good going to university and going on doing a master's but yeah, I think you've got to get field experience as well. You've got to be out. You've got to be out there doing stuff. And you're right. You build up connections as well. You meet people, and talk to people who've been there and done it, or as well as learning on the sort of on the job or whatever it is you're studying. So yeah, we're kind of on the same hymn sheet. That's That's good. So tell me, is there anything on the horizon for EWT bird of prey programs, or by the sounds of things, you've got that much cooking at the moment, and obviously vultures are in such a sorry state at the moment that, I don't know whether you have much time to think about what else. Obviously the Karoo project, is there anything else really planned, or?
Yeah, we've got some exciting stuff happening with our vulture conservation work, and it involves partnerships with other bird-focused organizations like BirdLife South Africa, but we're starting to think really big, and we've got a really good network in Southern Africa across the SADC, so the South African Development Southern African development countries, and we're partnering up with NGOs and conservation authorities across these Southern African countries, and it's an approach that we're really needing to adopt for the conservation of vultures, because they just are a big challenge just because of their ability to move, and they certainly don't take borders into consideration. So they're just so highly mobile that you can't really conserve them in one area. So you need this kind of holistic approach. So what's really exciting is we're starting this kind of cross-border collaboration with some of the organizations in Southern Africa, and it's allowing us to really tackle the key threats to vultures in the region, and also achieve a big impact. There's not just one organization going in. So just to kind of elaborate on that a bit. So in Southern Africa, we have a big problem with poisoning. Vultures, it's the biggest driver for declines in vultures across Africa. And poisoning occurs in kind of two different forms. We get direct poisoning and indirect poisoning. So vultures are either directly poisoned and killed and harvested for their body parts, which often are used and traded in traditional medicine. I'm not sure if you've been reading the news, but that one of the biggest poisoning events in the world and in history has now happened with vultures in Guinea-Bissau, where over 2,000 critically endangered hooded vultures were poisoned and their body parts were removed. So in Africa, part of the tradition is they prescribe vulture body parts, in particular the brains and the head, and they prescribe that by traditional practitioners, and they take it in with the idea that it's going to give them foresight and bring them luck. So it's quite an interesting thing why they're actually taking in these body parts. So if someone wants to kind of play the lotto, they go out and they find a traditional healer, and they are prescribed and given vulture brains. So really interesting. So they're directly targeted for their body parts, and that's obviously driving quite a lot of the decline in vultures. They're also directly persecuted because vultures have a unique way of giving away the location of a carcass. And I'm not sure if Andre, I don't want to go into too much detail, but it's called sentinel poisoning. So what the poachers are doing, and it's very closely linked to elephant poaching. The vultures are giving away the location of these elephant and rhino carcasses. The rangers are able to follow up on these carcasses quicker and get onto the tracks and catch the perpetrators. So what they're doing is they're putting poison baits out in the landscape, and they're systematically removing vultures from the landscape. And we are having some of the biggest loss of vultures due to sentinel poisoning in Southern Africa. It's a huge issue, and it's what we think happened in Botswana last year, July, when over 500 vultures were killed on one elephant carcass. So this poisoning is driving these declines, and what we've taken is this approach to tackle it both reactively through what we do is and what Andre does mainly outside of South Africa is this poisoning intervention training. So we capacitate teams and response units to be able to respond to a poisoning event and stop it in its tracks and prevent further loss of birds. As you can imagine, you leave a carcass out in the landscape that's got poison on it, it's going to kill a hell of a lot of animals, not only vultures, it's often other scavengers. So, and the poisons they're using, carbamates and a local agrochemical called Temic that is also it's a aldicarb. It's used to treat nematodes in maize and in sugarcane. It's highly toxic. They call it two-step in South Africa because people often take it and they take 2 steps and they're dead.
Right,
so
yeah.
Mixing that with water, and they're basting it on carcasses. So the longer the carcass is out in the field, the more animals it's going to kill. So we train people how to recognize a poisoning scene, recognize the symptoms in the animals that have taken in these poisons. Often we come across scavengers like hyenas showing very distinct symptoms, and a variety of different symptoms also in the birds. And they know exactly how to respond to that, how to decontaminate the scene, how to treat it as a crime scene and collect evidence to follow up, prosecution of people that are caught in that area. Often we actually catch the perpetrators, but there's no chain of evidence. So we're doing a lot of reactive work to address this huge spike in poisoning across Southern Africa. And as I say, it's cross border, and we have quite a unique setup where we have a lot of communities living on the borders of these national parks. Kruger has 2 million people just on its western boundary. So you can imagine there's all this, there's a high kind of level of infiltration of people into the park and doing various illegal activities. So we need to work in those communities. And a lot of the work we also do is more proactive, is actually working with the communities. What we're also finding is that a lot of the body parts that they're actually consuming as part of traditional medicine have traces of these toxins, of these poisons that are used. So we did a bit of work actually analyzing these body parts, and the parts that are most often consumed are the heads and the beaks that take in the poison. So we took a whole safeguarding human health approach and went into the clinics, into the traditional authorities, the traditional healers, and we started working with them and just raising awareness around the fact a lot of them didn't know they were prescribing their customers these poisons, and no one wants to prescribe poisons to their customers. They're going to lose them very quickly. But yeah, we've got quite a suite of tools that we're actually using to address the poisoning issue. The biggest one is trying to address it in a reactive manner, which is a bit of a tough one because we're not stopping the poisoning happening. But we're capacitating enough people out there and individuals and response units to be able to really curb the number of wildlife killed on these poison carcasses. As I say, vultures also killed indirectly. So often what happens is you have human wildlife conflict. A lion will break out of a park and it'll kill someone's livestock. They'll go and poison that lion. The vultures feed on the lion that's been successfully eliminated, plus the carcass left out there for the lion. Vultures feed on that, they become the indirect victims. So it's a tough thing it's a very challenging threat to address. We've got a really exciting tool that we're using, and I mean, I'm not really allowed talking too much about it because it is quite sensitive, but it's basically an early warning system that we're setting up in the landscape using different tracked animals. So we have these high resolution tracking devices out on a variety of animals, birds, scavengers, lions, everything. And we're developing different algorithms to be able to identify when there's a feeding event and where there's a potential poisoning event. And it's giving us eyes in the sky, a whole new level. So really exciting.
That is good. But yeah, it just goes to show, like you say, because we talked to Andre about the Guinea-Bissau, and a couple of people asked about that anyway before, or asked me to ask about that beforehand because it had been in the news. And it is. It's not just when you talk. South Africa's vast, but then you've got the whole African continent that these vultures travel, north, south, east, west, and in between. So, it's not just, and then you've got it's an area that, funnily enough, you talking about it, I've just today been emailing Campbell about traditional medicine because it's an area I'm really interested in. Is the human bird of prey sort of conflict side of things? So it fascinates me in many ways. That side of things. So, but you've got that element of people, whether they're trying to survive or whether they're trying to understand what the lottery numbers are going to be. All this, crazy stuff. It's there's so many sort of things you've got to deal with, but it's interesting. And Andre talked about the work with the Hawke Conservancy Trust and the poison response kits that they developed. So it is, it's great to hear the different things that are that you're working on, and then obviously the sort of top secret James Bond, by the sound of things, stuff that's getting developed as well.
I mean, there was an interesting paper out the other day using albatrosses to find illegal Japanese trawlers. So there's some really cool work. A lot of the work done by Max Planck, the Max Planck Institute, tracking animals around the world and having an early warning system for things like earthquakes. These animals are behaving in certain ways when there's earthquakes or tsunamis. So there's really cool applications for tracking technology and stuff out there. So technology is definitely opening up new doors in the ways we conserve animals.
Yeah, brilliant. So obviously we'll talk about a bit about what you're up to again. So you're obviously here, there, and everywhere. Well, as you said, but you've got the Marshall Eagle working in Karoo. Is that a sort of seasonal thing, or obviously it's not with certain aspects of it. What are you busy with at the moment, or as soon as lockdown passes, what's first job on the list?
Sure. So we we're really fortunate because we've all been given essential services permits. So while South Africa's on a national lockdown, we're able to get on the roads and do our work. So last week I actually went out to the Karoo because one of our GPS track birds went offline, and often a big part of the study is trying to identify why these birds are, what's killing them in the Karoo. And so I went out there, and often these birds fly into power lines or get electrocuted on unsafe power lines. And this particular bird did get electrocuted. So it's really important for us to identify what the different threats are in the Karoo. Some of our birds have just gone offline, and my suspicion is they've been shot, and then the tracking device is destroyed. One site had a wind farm nearby, and marshals are one of the more collision-prone species with wind turbines. So I do suspect that could have been the case, and that was just kind of brushed under the carpet because I wasn't allowed access on that wind farm. So in terms of my activities next, we meant to be doing an aerial survey across a big part of South Africa. It's 1,750 kilometers round trip, and I was actually meant to be doing that this week, and that's to identify which martial eagle nests are active in our Karoo study site. We're probably going to have to do that by ground now because it's we can't get in the air because of the lockdown. So I'm more than likely going to be doing that. I've also got a farmer that's struggling with a marshal that's killing lambs. It's killed 6 since the beginning of March. So I want to go out there and catch that bird and put a tracker device on it so we can set up that early warning system for him and maybe even just scare the eagle away a bit from that area. Often when you catch a bird in a certain area, they'd never go back. And then we've got our poisoning intervention work in Kruger National Park. So they've had a huge spike in poisoning. So within the next month, I'm going to be traveling up to Kruger where we have to train over 600 rangers, field rangers, and distribute these poisoning response kits. So we've got a lot of work, yeah. And at the same time, we also got a really cool study on Cape vultures, which we've caught 10 birds. And we've fitted them with these high-resolution tracking devices. We need to catch another 3. And we're using those birds and that tracking information to develop these collision risk maps for South Africa. And this is specifically with wind farms because there's a massive movement of wind energy in South Africa. Okay. Of government-endorsed sites to become these development zones for wind energy. Cape vultures are getting whacked by wind turbines, and we're worried about the cumulative impact of these wind farms. So we're tracking birds and we're developing these really high-resolution predictive models that show where there's high collision risk for Cape vultures, and that informs wind development, and it helps us exclude high-risk areas from development. And I think that's really important for us. And I was actually just working on a map of our birds. So I caught a Cape vulture in March, fitted with a tracking device, and this bird just flew. It went AWOL. It traveled across the entire map of South Africa. It came down to a colony here in the Cape, and then it just said, "I'm going to the Kalahari." It's now in Namibia. So, wow. Yeah, I'm not sure if I can share my screen.
Try. I don't know if I can let you.
Let me know if this is sharing.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's up.
So these are all our capes that we're tracking for this wind farm project. Yeah. So the development zones here in the Eastern Cape into the Karoo in the center here. This is the one bird I'm speaking about. It here, and it just decided in a few days just to fly. And I mean, this is massive. This is like, yeah, it's really far. It's over 1,000 kilometers. Yeah, you can just see how extensively these birds move. But what's really interesting is a lot of the birds are coming back to this area to the east of Lesotho because there's a lot of breeding colonies. So they're getting ready, they're gearing up for breeding, which is really cool. And all the youngsters are these ones that are moving throughout these areas up into Namibia. So that's very cool.
Well, that's what I was. That's what I was going to ask you, and you before you answered it was the pink or the pinky red dot. I'm assuming that's a young bird that's just wandering about. Is it trying to find its way in life, so to speak?
Absolutely, yeah. This bird, this bird went on definitely on a little bit of a walkabout or a flyabout. So it's really incredible. And what really amazed me is when you look at the timestamps. And I actually want to maybe write this up in a small, just a small article. Is this bird flew at night during a full moon? Nothing really has been documented in these birds. So,
No.
Really interesting. Yeah, these tracking devices are opening up new doors for us. They really are.
So just looking at that map and like you say, Lesotho and where the colonies are, is this. I don't mean this to be a stupid question. Is that the sort of areas where wind farms they're looking at putting turbines in? I've been lucky enough to go to Lesotho. It's incredible.
Unbelievable place. Yeah.
Is that the sort of thing that wind farms are they looking at putting them up? Because obviously vultures need updrafts, lift to get off the ground, and is that a clash? Is that in terms of where wind farms are looking to develop to harness wind, or not?
Absolutely. So there's a massive overlap in terms of where these birds like to fly and where they have these almost like flight highways, and they slope soaring and they're riding ridge lines, and that's exactly where they're wanting to put turbines. And I've done a bit of an analysis here, but you'll start seeing all these hotspots where these birds spend a lot of time. So what we're able to do is extrapolate this and overlay these heat maps, basically these risk maps, over areas where they're wanting to develop wind farms, and you can literally show them down to the nearest kilometer, to the nearest meter, where is a good place and where isn't a good place to build a turbine. Most of the wind farms that we are now currently working on are in this kind of area, so around Queenstown, and then there are quite a few here in central South Africa where Cape vultures are actually locally extinct, although you can see they do travel past here. With my birds, you can see they are there. So yeah, they certainly are traveling in areas and there's this big overlap where there's a lot of wind and where they can harness wind and where our birds like to spend their time. So we need to address these and stop wind farms from being built there.
And well, yeah, of course. Just going back to what you said then, obviously, where Cape vultures are currently locally extinct, I suppose you run the risk of these wind farm companies saying, well, there's no vultures here, we'll stick some up, but that doesn't mean there shouldn't be vultures there, and that doesn't mean to say work isn't going to mean that vultures move back into there. But so yeah, well, you've got your hands full. That's really interesting to see those maps and the heat maps, especially, and the stuff you're working on. And it just goes to show, what amazing stuff technologies bring into the to the fore with raptor conservation. Okay, well, we're on before we finish. I don't want to keep you for too long, Gareth, because I'm well aware it's your evening over there, or early evening, like it is
As
here.
you can see in the background, it's got a bit dark.
Well, it's all right. It's blue sky outside here, but I wanted to touch on. I'm not going to ask you that dreaded question that I keep tripping up and asking people, but yeah, what sort of. Well, first of all, I want to ask you about owls, because I get a lot of people who are passionate about owls. In the UK, all over the world, owls attract people. They draw people in. I'm lucky enough. This sounds really daft. I've been to South Africa twice. I've never seen a Pettels fishing owl, but I own a Pettels fishing owl feather I found on the banks. Forget which one it is. So that's as close as I've ever got to one. But just talk quickly, not quickly, talk as long as you're willing to on some of the work you're doing on owls and any of the conflict that or not necessarily conflict on that you're finding with the owl species you're working on.
Sure. So to start off with the pals, actually some great news today. We found our team went out and they found 2 active territories, and it's such an important finding for us because these birds they spaced out so their population is so their densities are so low, and they rely so heavily on these pretty pristine environments. So, we currently monitor 17 pairs, and for us and for the South African population, it's a hell of a lot of birds, and to work on them in areas, it's extremely challenging. So it's this thick riparian habitat. We've got, in most of the areas, we've got things like leopards and hippos and crocodiles. So working on them has a hell of a lot of challenges, but it's been one of the most exciting projects that we do. So we monitor these pairs within these pristine habitats, but what's happening and what's impacting these habitats is obviously what's happening upstream. So a lot of the tributaries that flow into our study sites, and especially the river, like the Olifants River, are heavily polluted, and it's really affecting our study population. So the work that we do is focusing on, first of all, the smaller, lower hanging fruit. So working with farmers and stuff to reduce their water extraction, reduce their amount of their pesticides running off into the river systems. And then we move away into the catchments, where it's quite nice because you have this overlap, and they worlds apart in terms of the habitat and the species. But we're linking our work with our grass owl. Our grass owls basically nest and live in the catchment areas of the Olifants and Blyde River. And we're working on these areas to, reduce mining, reduce anthropogenic fragmentation and disturbance of those sites, so that we protect the integrity of the catchments as well. So back to the pals, they're a really challenging bird to work on. We've been chased by many a hippo. We've actually been trying to catch pals to fit them with tracking devices, because no one knows anything about their spatial ecology. These river systems have these massive flood events, and flooding is a massive issue because it's wiping out a lot of their trees. They need very old trees to breed in. They breed in the cavities of these massive figs and these kippersol trees and these beautiful jackberries. And what's happening is an increased pulse of floods and flooding events because of the catchment areas is causing loss of a lot of this riparian habitat. And it's also a very hard thing to address. And we are looking into reforesting some of these areas through planting trees and protecting those trees. But I'm a bit all over the place now. But yeah, so we monitor about 17 pairs of these owls, and obviously they are indicator species for how the system's doing. And we've been trying to trap them, and I mean, our last trapping event, we're sitting in the hide in the middle of the forest, pitch black, and then a hippo walked right past the hide. And then you start hearing, leopards calling, and when you start feeling a little bit safe, then you start hearing, things coming in and out of the water at night. So it's been a big challenge. We haven't been able to catch any yet, but I think we've got a really cool technique that we're going to try out this year, towards the end of the year when breeding picks up. But I think I just want to show you a video from today. We found one of our pals.
Cool. Yeah, go for it.
Let me just quickly share. So this is probably, as I say, a very exciting time, because we found a nest where this youngster hatched from, and we don't get to monitor them from egg to being, throughout development to when they fledge. Can you see the video? Yeah. This is a beautiful Pals fishing owl chick. Look at
Look at the eyes.
So John sent this to me today. He's fortunate enough to be able to get out into the field. So this pair we've been monitoring for quite a while. Quite interesting, but how they survive is it's just incredible, because they're harassed by baboons all the time. And then we also followed a chick in this territory almost to fledging, and just out of nowhere we set up a camera trap. Another owl came, and a Pals fishing owl actually predated on the chick and killed the chick, which is something we never knew happened. So wow. And it fed on the chick, so it was just a really unique and pretty disturbing sight. But the breeding has just been so low, and so their productivity in this population has just been incredibly low. And you know, all the literature speaks of a breeding season. We've been finding the opposite. These owls are breeding throughout the year. We've got no set breeding seasons for them. So it's also kind of thrown a spanner in the works when you monitoring chick development and chick health, and the next thing out of nowhere appears a juvenile flying around. You're like, where did that come from? So it's been a very challenging project, but also really rewarding. We walk around, we do these annual surveys of about 90 kilometers of this river system, and we've been counting the pairs every year since about 2007, and we've just seen a steady decline in both the trees that they need to nest in and also breeding pairs. I think last year we only had 3 adults in this 90-kilometer stretch of river. So big challenge. And what we're actually doing now is we found these 17 birds that we're now monitoring intensively sit on a pretty pristine river that runs alongside one of our focal study sites. And this is, so you get the Olifants River and the Blyder River that run kind of parallel. The one that's so heavily polluted. And now we found the Blyder, which is this incredibly pristine river that flows up into one of the longest green canyons in the world, called the Blyder River Canyon. And what we're doing is we're working on protecting this Blyder with as much resources as we can, and we're working with a lot of the farmers to set up stewardships so they become kind of custodians of these different owls and their habitat. So it's been a really cool project for us. Yeah, so the owl work is really interesting.
No, I mean, that's awesome. Thank you for that video as well. I think people will love that. How you can't fall in love with an owl chick like that. I don't know. Anyway, right. We've probably taken up more than enough of your time, Gareth. So I won't.
No problem at all. I'm in no rush.
No, well,
no rush during this lockdown, so I'd rather enjoy it.
Well, I was only going to ask you that other question about any interesting stories. I'd said to you about how I asked people about, tell us the most memorable moment, but you can't really, because there's so many of them, especially if you're sat in a hide. Just one of the, you've already explained one with leopards and hippos and all the rest of it, outside. But yeah, if you've got one thing that comes to mind that really sticks with you, feel free to elaborate. I tell you what, I'll ask you one species that you would love to see in the wild or study or work on, either or. What's on the bucket list still? Doesn't have to be South African eagle.
Harpy eagles are always. I have to see one. That's on my bucket list. Obviously, I love eagles, and I get to work on Africa's biggest eagle, which has been really incredible. But a harpy eagle, absolutely, that would really blow my mind. And then, I think there's just so many of them out there. I can't really pick one out.
Well, we had again about, it might have been the last one we did. No, it was the second from last one we did. We had Everton Miranda on from Brazil talking about harpy eagles. So amazing. And all his work with harpy eagles and the ecotourism they're doing by building platforms with the farmers so photographers can come and it's like trickles down and benefits the farmers and the landowners. And there, interestingly, I did think about this then when you were talking about Pell's owls, and one of the ways they've worked with finding harpy eagle nests is by paying the farmers that are working in the forests to understand what a harpy eagle sounds like and nest sites look like, and they're doing a lot of work on that. So check it out if you get a chance. Have a look at Everton's. And the other thing is he's a really nice guy as well. So get in touch with him. He's cool. I'm
awesome.
sure.
But just you actually just reminded me of one of the tools we're actually going to start using for pals. So they're very vocal, and as I mentioned, the study sites have been incredibly challenging because it's this thick, dangerous bush. And I remember chatting to my field officers, John and Lindy. They sent me photographs of that just from a day surveying. Their clothes were ripped to shreds from just trying to get through the undergrowth and get to the islands and stuff where these birds breed. So one really exciting thing that we're starting to do is we're building our own acoustic monitors, our acoustic receivers. And what we're going to do is we're going to put them out. We were going to buy some, but they're quite expensive. So we're starting to look at making our own, and we've assembled a few. We've got parts from the UK and from the States and different microphones. So you leave them out in the territories, and you just listen. You leave them out for like 3 or 4 weeks, and then you retrieve these audio receivers, and you download obviously the audio, and we've got special software that can start identifying, the signature of the pals fishing owl's calls, and then you get presence, absence, and then you know exactly where to focus your work, and it's just really going to be really useful for us, because this on foot approach is really, really challenging.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because in my cupboard, I have got my own handmade or homemade, like exactly the same thing. So it's a sealable, I don't know, lunchbox with a Tascam thingy in, and then the external microphone, because I was going to do the same thing for European hobbies in this country, because they're notoriously very difficult to monitor, but they can be quite vocal around nest sites, and so I made one, because exactly the same as you, I looked at the professional ones and they were like £2,500 to buy one. I was like, well, yeah, that isn't going to happen. So I'd be interested to hear how you get on with your ones, because you probably, I'm not very good at making stuff like that. So
John's an absolute fundy with these little electronics and stuff, and he's built really cool Nest cameras, and I'm sure they do work already. So the acoustic receivers, we're actually putting in an application for I'm not sure if you've heard of Wildlife Acoustics. They send out a call every quarter. So this will be our third attempt to try get some acoustic receivers from them, but we'll keep pushing.
Oh, good. Well, I'd love to hear how you get on, because I've heard of other people. I know a friend of mine tried it with hobbies in this country, and she had pretty good success. She only put 2 out, but they work pretty well with that species as well. So, good luck with it. Right.
Awesome.
Okay, I'm going to end the video, because we've got You need to go off and do other things, and I'm sure I do as well. Right. Thank you, Gareth. I'm going to end the recording. Cheers, everyone, for tuning in. I hope everyone enjoyed it.